Fantastic. Thank you, Alicia. So we're just waiting for everyone to come into the room. Welcome to everyone joining us today. We're just watching the number going up of everyone joining, so we're just going to let everyone join, give everyone a chance to join. Welcome everyone. Please post where you're joining us from today in the chat. It's great to hear from you. Cool, so the number is still going up, so we're just waiting for everyone to get into the room. Great. Cool, so we'll just wait for that number to settle. And then we'll begin. Welcome to everyone joining us today. Great, okie dokie. Well, I think we'll start, and then people, I'm sure, will join also as we go on. So great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Matthew Freeman. I am the Stephen Joseph Committee Seminar Lead. Today is the 5th of 6 Stephen Joseph Committee seminars being presented in 2021. We hope that many of you were able to join us for the previous seminars, which were an introduction to Stephen Joseph, lighting in the round, directing for the round, and the ABTT at 60 years. We would like to thank our partners for this event, the Society of British Theatre Designers. As with other webinars, please change your view to gallery view so that you can see all panelists on the same screen. This button can be found in the top right corner of your screen. We can use the chat function in this webinar. Alicia will be looking after this today. She will say hello to you all through this now. Please post where you are joining us from today. Feel free to chat to one another and give your thoughts throughout the event. We would love to hear from you. Links and information will be posted in the chat throughout the event. There is also a Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. We have a Q&A at the end of this session, so please put any questions you have in here and our panelists will try and answer them. A reminder that this session is being recorded and that it will be available on the ABTT website, along with all relevant information after the event. Now to introduce the host of the seminar. Dave Wybrow has been director of the Cockpit, a purpose-built London theatre in the round for over 20 years and is known for his work with the Godot Company. The Cockpit has managed to stay open during the pandemic and is due to revive their 5-star in the round production of Waiting for Godot next year. Over to you, Dave.
Hello, everyone, and lovely to see you. In fact, not see you. I can't see any of you apart from the panelists, but and I can't even see me because I do these things with self-view off. So if I start to slump out of sight, Alicia, perhaps you'll alert me. The panelists, I'm particularly excited by this seminar because the panelists are particularly diverse and interesting. The title of the seminar was and still is Beyond the Proscenium Arch, but these people are well beyond the Proscenium Arch. We're not talking even about theatres in the round with seats on audience on 4 sides. We're talking about the possibilities of theatrical and of applied theatre and the possibilities of things that you can do with the idea of performance and the idea of audience, as well as the idea of staging. So I'm very pleased to have Anna Furse. Anna Furse directs the MA in Performance Making at Goldsmiths, University of London, and has been working in the Department of Theatre and Performance for almost 20 years. She is an award-winning professional theatre director and writer. She continues to make new works internationally with her company Athletes of the Heart. Her research interests include feminist performance and the overlaps between theatre and medicine from cultural perspectives. That's Anna Furse, and I can tell you that's a very shortened version of a very illustrious CV. Klaus Kruse. Klaus Kruse is a director, scenographer, performer, poet and songwriter based in the UK since 2002. He is a senior lecturer at the Theatre Department at Falmouth University. He specialises in designing and directing immersive theatre productions. Klaus has a particular interest in the significance of the audience's physical position in the performance space, and his company, Living Structures, utilises changing spatial reality as a tool for storytelling that engages audiences in an unusual way. Diana Ford. Di Ford is a designer, maker and illustrator based in West Wales. Throughout her career, storytelling has been at the centre of what she creates. Her work has primarily involved puppet design, fabrication, and occasionally puppeteering, as well as set design and workshop facilitation. It was in Nepal where she discovered a desire to teach and encourage children to continue to be creative. She spent 4 months in a school in Kathmandu teaching children puppetry and drama. David Farley. David Farley is a dyslexic set, costume and production designer for theatre, opera and live events. He is associate designer for Slung Low, who specialise in large-scale outdoor community centre productions. David has a passion for technology, materials and making, and is a director of the Society of British Theatre Designers. And I would urge you to look at all these people's websites, where you will find some arresting material. And I'm particularly in respect to Dave Farley, who has a website which shows a set built outside on water, and everybody I show it to goes, "That's really cool." So, David, let's start with maybe the first question to you, which is, like the final questions. What are your priorities as a practitioner, and what excites you?
What excites me? First of all, I guess good challenges, and kind of working outdoors creates a lot of very specific challenges. So that is always a lot of fun. And then why not throw into that interacting with a community company and general public who will do an awful lot of what they want to do, let alone what you would like. Dynamic is really exciting, and definitely kind of keeps you on your toes. I guess in terms of my priorities, I mean, I'm a storyteller at heart, and throughout all of the work, you know, how no matter how crazy it might be, whether it be a floating set that kind of bursts up out of the water, or we blow it up and set it on fire, at the end of the day, it's all storytelling, and being able to tell a story in an exciting way that engages a broad range of people, you know, people who have chosen to come and see your work. All of the work I do with Slung Low is pay what you want. So they haven't purchase tickets, they're going to leave a donation of some description. You have to be, the ante is up, and you really have to engage with them and keep them with you. Yeah.
Can you just give us an idea of what led you to this kind of work? Actually, there's two questions just to fill out the picture a bit. Give us an example of a common production context. So, Coventry local authority ring up Low Slung and say, we want to do a show. So how does it work? How do you come to be doing this? And what's the kind of production context? And how did you get into it?
So I got into it after badgering Alan Lane. I heard that he was going to be doing a show on water.
Unfortunately, David, we're really struggling to hear you at the moment. Dave?
Yeah, we better, yeah.
Sorry, David. I think we're going to try and speak to another speaker just for the moment while we try and sort your audio out, if that's all right.
But we'll come back to you, David, if we can. Anna, same questions to you. So, what excites you? What are your priorities at the moment? And then, if you could just give us an idea of some of the production concepts or the latest ones, maybe that you're involved in, and what's led you to where you are now? To be a vast question. Let's start with what are your priorities and what excites you?
I think you keep reminding me of my age. Thank you. Priorities have become, I mean, I need to preface this by saying I left earning my living as a theatre director and writer over 20 years ago. So I don't need to make work to eat, if that makes sense. And that shifted my priorities quite a lot, because it meant that I could really choose the kind of research I wanted to do, and I could take a long time to make a piece of work happen. So my priorities became in the last few years much more about forming relationships way outside of the discipline, for instance, with the medical environment, which I've been working with for some years now. Not only, but that's been a big kind of feature. So my priorities for me have been about finding new relationships to make new kinds of work happen. But then I have this very large responsibility in running this MA program, which is very international and very interdisciplinary. So another priority is making that happen. Sadly, we've had to cancel the Final Shows Festival just yesterday due to a COVID outbreak. But normally these students come from all over the world, from all kinds of backgrounds, not just theatre or dance or live art or fine art, but video, architecture, music. It's very kind of interdisciplinary laboratory. So my priority is really supporting these very diverse people through the program to become their own practitioners at the end. What excites me is very often what they do, because they always do astonishing things, because they don't start with a text, they start with a concept. They work in sites, they work in all kinds of ways. So they're always kind of unfolding something brand new for me. So that really excites me. Yes, and I think I've always been, my priority, I was a dancer before I was a theatre maker, and my priority's consistently been and excited about the body as a scenographic tool. Even when working with text, like with Payne's Plough, there was always a big physical focus. So I'm very interested in how scenography begins with presence, the physical presence, and then how the non-human world and the human interact with each other in that performance space, wherever it is and whatever it might mean. So I think that just about sums up my priorities and what excites me. Can't hear you.
Sorry, Dave, just unmute.
Yeah. Sorry. So sorry. Klaus, there's some noise outside which I'm trying to keep out of the room, so I might occasionally do that. Klaus, what excites you?
So, yeah, I mean, in a way, the work that I do or have been doing for the last 10 years really kind of focuses on creating environments that, or in a way, maybe contraptions and environments that an audience can enter. And maybe different to other kind of immersive work where you might enter a building and you move from room to room and encounter different, scenarios or different scenes. We kind of change and move and morph the environment around the audience, and so the kind of transformation of space becomes a tool to communicate parts of the narrative, to create emotional responses, physical responses in the audience. So I'm really interested in kind of the way that architectural space can be changed and shifted, and how that can become part of storytelling. And I think part of that is that I enjoy kind of creating surprises for an audience, creating moments of where you suddenly gobsmacked, you go like, "Whoa, my God!" Suddenly everything is different. And so, it's a bit like, when you create a surprise birthday party for someone or so, there's a real kind of, but there's also a mischievousness in there where I do like bringing people to a place where they might go like, "Whoa, I don't quite know if that's that comes to the border of is it too much or not." So I like playing on these kind of border points, and so much about kind of opening up the eyes in the back of the audience, so that when we enter a space that we use sound and voice and music to kind of get us into a space where we come into a different kind of state of consciousness in some way, where because we interact frontal so much of the time, through this webinar in some ways is frontal. Our day-to-day communication often is kind of quite frontal, and yeah, I'm just really interested in what happens when we kind of shift our attention elsewhere. And when we start to work with echolocation in some way, like are starting to experience a space through maybe our own voice and the reverberation that we get from the building and the space. So those kind of things I'm kind of interested in. And yeah, and then I'm kind of interested in geometry. I'm interested in the way that architecture can be choreographed, how we can use objects to bring the space in and open it up, and yeah. So those are the kind of things that I like working with, and a bit there's something that's kind of enveloping people in an environment. And I speak about when as a kid you put a blanket over a table and you go underneath there, you're suddenly in a different world, and you can kind of imagine to be in a like on the North Pole, or you can imagine to be in a submarine or whatever. So that really triggers the imagination to kind of create this blanket over us. And so I'm working with these kind of idea of a blanket, of a space where you're on the inside, but maybe you're also on the outside. You don't quite know, am I looking out? Am I looking in? I'm really interested in perspective, the way that we look at things. Am I an observer? Am I being observed? Am I a part of it? Am I alienated by it? Am I suddenly in a really close proximity to a performer? So I'm hugely interested in all these different relationships, and I'm interested in change and changing those. So to set up one idea, and we might settle into that as an audience, and then to pull the carpet out from underneath everybody's feet and to say, like, oh, now the rules have changed. And those are the kind of things that I'm excited about.
And you've excited me, Klaus, I can tell you, definitely. No location, I'm definitely. What production context are you working in? How is this work happening when it happens?
Oh, yeah, so a little bit like Hannah, I have to say, I don't have to make a living from it, which is great, because I teach as well. So usually we'll as a company, we work on one production for quite a long time. And then so Cart Macabre has, for example, toured, went to the Old Vic tunnels, and then we managed to get a gig visit at the Niemeyer Center, and we managed to bring it to Shunt Waltz, and another production has also toured. So we tour stuff, we bring stuff around, but usually we take a long time to make work, 2-3 years, and we make a big production, and then it has its kind of birth, and then at some point also its death.
Okay, and who's the we, Klaus? Is this a standing company? Is it part of Falmouth? Is it who's the we? I know it's obviously the company that you're working with, but where are they?
So Living Structures is myself, and then Dougald Ferguson, Danny D'Amelia, and Verity Standen, and Kieran Clark has joined us now, and that's a kind of a core team of people working together that kind of come together around a production. So we exist, and we come together around a production, and then we will get people in with whatever expertise, skills we need for our next project. And some of them are also kind of members of the Living Structures family in some way, because we've worked with them multiple times. And are you
fundraising for this? Are you going to ACE for this, or is
it's usually ACE funding. We've had some support from Hall for Cornwall, some from Niemeyer Center Aviles. The latest thing we do, I'm trying to a little bit like draw funds from other areas now as well. We all see how kind of things are developing funding wise. So we've just started working on a new project, and we've had a Story Futures funding, and that has obviously has come through Falmouth University because it's kind of an academic route to go. And then we've had some funding from the Southwest Creative Technology Network. So we're kind of opening other avenues, and that's kind of really exciting to us. And that's we're delving into VR in the moment, which is interesting as well, because kind of again, not settling for the one or the other, but mixing the idea of virtual environments and real environments.
We've got you. Thank you, Klaus. That's great. Diana Ford, tell us the same things. What excites you, and what are your priorities at the moment? You can refer to anything you like, but I'm interested to know what you're doing sort of nowish, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, so I suppose for me, yeah, because my work crosses over quite a lot of different fields, but what really excites me, I do quite a bit of community outreach work, and getting participants in the communities actually involved in a part of the production that I'm working on. So it's like you get everybody into workshops. You're actually creating with them. They're making something that they can physically bring along to the final production or parade or whatever we're bringing, and then seeing the final bit sort of come together when the audience is there with their bit that they feel like they're completely a part of what you've created. Like I absolutely love it, and it's just sort of just brings that extra level to what you're sort of trying to create. So yeah, it's definitely I'm really keen on getting communities involved with work and seeing how anyone's able to create something and make something and be part of this bigger performance or picture, so to speak. So obviously I really love like the sorry, I lost my words now. So like when you obviously like the initial design stage, and seeing your pieces like suddenly turn from 2D to 3D, you know. But yeah, like I said, I think what I love the most is like the team getting together and seeing how everybody's hard work has paid off, and that sort of moment where everything is happening and we're this is really coming together now. So that sort of feeling of all the team, you know, the stage management, everybody, and it's just building those like strong relationships, I suppose, as well. That's like my main priority, is just making sure that I can work well with my team, and being as clear and concise, and like being able to work well with everybody, you know. So it's
you're usually the puppet meister. You're usually the puppeteer, but not always the operator, but the
yeah, a lot of the time I have been the puppeteer as well. Like a lot of the puppets I have created are like sort of large scale carnival puppets, so it's nice. You sort of you get a taster of everything, so you are performing in a sense, and you're interacting with the audience, and you're sort of almost blurring the lines of what can be what, you know. So
and just a clue to the production context. Again, are you working mostly in Wales? Are you working with local authority sponsored projects, or
mostly in Wales. Like my most recent project was designing and co-creating for National Theatre of Wales. It ended up being a film called Go Tell the Bees, which was a massive community project which had been sort of developed over 4 years, and they were getting lots of different groups from within Pembrokeshire to create this production. So we finished that in May, so it's going to be touring around Pembrokeshire in the summer now.
Brilliant. Thank you all. That's fascinating. So it's definitely beyond the proscenium, that's for sure, all of us. So there are some other probing questions. The next one of which is, and I can't resist going straight to Anna for this. How do you conceive the role of performer within the context you are working in, Anna? And I'm hoping you're going to tell us about dead bodies as performers. But
well, I'll first talk about live performers. So when I work with live performers as a director, my relationship with a performer, even if we're working on an existing text, is that they are a creative contributor. I just want to drop in that I've worked in Eastern Europe quite a lot, where there's a completely different tradition of theatre creation, as I'm sure we're aware of. But with companies where, I mean, one of them is quite a major company in Ljubljana, but where the actor just assumes, and they will talk to you, and they're not academics, but they will talk to you about, they're starting research on the production. And that means that they will spend weeks and months finding out about things and becoming part of this ensemble process. That's my absolutely favorite way of working is where the performer is your collaborator. You're not directing them to do something that you want them to do. You're deciding with them what is going to happen, and you've got the outside eye, and obviously you lead, but they're a hugely kind of important creative force. That's what I look for in my performers. If we're going to talk about dead bodies, I didn't actually have any dead bodies performing. I didn't have dead bodies performing, Dave, but I did explore the dead body as a performative presence, indeed, researching in the Anatomy Theatre of King's College towards my piece on anatomy theatres, which has fascinated me for some time now. So the whole idea of how the body became a presence in that moment, that shift, that historical shift when the body was opened, and alongside the London Anatomy Theatre, just minutes away, was Shakespeare's Globe. So the thoughts that these burghers would come into town and, you know, double their money in one day, go see a body cut up and then go and see a soliloquy. I love this idea of kind of the idea of introspection and passing the body being quite similar events that happened at the same historical time, but also how that transformed our idea of what a body is, what a dead body is, what medicine is, what is disgust, what is acceptable, what can you allow on stage or not. And a lot of theatre artists have tried to push this. We know this with people who've worked with their own blood, their own flesh. You know, we know that there has been this kind of alternative tradition of really pushing the sanctity of the body somewhere very difficult in performance. I'm personally not attracted to body art, but I'm very interested that it's there. So where am I? I'm talking about the body again in performance, but principally I love performers, and I love performers who consider themselves to be creative practitioners, who research, who think, who make, who bring whatever the project is, who bring all of themselves to that. And I especially like people who are fearless physically, even if they haven't got a training. So I think that's probably enough for now.
Okay, thank you very much. And how are we with David Farley? How's our sound with David?
How are we sounding now?
You're sounding all right at the moment. You may freeze and start to judder, but let's give it a go. The performer for you, David, how do you think of performance, and how do you think of performance qualities? Because performance qualities are very different depending on what we're hoping to achieve with an event. So, well,
yeah, and
what are the performance qualities for you? What do you think of as the performer? What do you think they're doing, and what does it need to do? What do they need to do, and how do they do it that contributes well to what you do?
They have to very much live what we are creating. You know, in a piece like Flood, performing on the water in right next to the coast, and it's cold and it's going to probably be raining, and then we're going to ask them to jump into that water as we set fire to the set. So for the performer to embrace and this world where we're also asking them to rely on audio technology to connect to the audience. So most of the work we do, the audience are wearing headphones, and we're feeding them a live feed from a mixed audio, and also a pre-recorded filmic style soundtrack, which is all mixed together and fed to them. So we're asking an awful lot of the performers on top of performing their characters within this part, and then alongside this kind of often very large community company who will have been brought together with very little training, if any, and rehearsals, but not masses of rehearsals. So there's also that element of bringing them with the performer and allowing them space to do what they need to do. So it's there's a lot going on for the performers. So for myself as a designer, I try and make them as comfortable as possible. I think rehearsing on the set from the get-go really helps, and it will often be that the set will be half built when we start rehearsals, and that gives an opportunity to adapt and reflect on what's going, how things are working, and then improve and take on board elements that performers are bringing to the design, and how it's actually working rather than how we thought it might work. Yeah, lots.
I mean, that's fascinating, and I'm reminded that ground control to Major Tom always reminded me of, always made me think of astronauts as performers. Because the whole thing was televised, and so if there was anything else happening, if there wasn't anything else happening at all with a space shot, it was definitely performance, because there they were, and they were wired up, and they were on TV, and they were having people tell them what to do, and prompts and cues, and there were a whole range of theatrical metaphors at play. And it sounds to me that you've got Major Toms at work out there.
Yeah, I would say that's very true, and also the performers have the director in their ear as well.
Yeah.
So kind of a live feed from the performers and also into the performers, which is invaluable when we're working in very uncontrolled public spaces, like in the middle of a town centre, where you might have to completely redirect or kind of point the performance in a different direction because of a group of drunken lads coming down the street, or giving them a heads up that these people are heading their direction and that we need to stall for 5 minutes whilst they're dealt with, or such. But so yeah, performance as astronauts, I think, it's a very good metaphor.
It's live choreography like this. I think it's tremendously exciting. Live choreography conducted, and I love the director in the ear thing. I think that's such an interesting idea.
And then for the community company, just how reassuring that is. It's like having their hand held, but because if they've got lines, they can be fed the lines, so they never have to worry about that. If they forget where they're supposed to be going, they can just get a gentle reminder in the ear that they're supposed to be leaving the stage now, or that bit of the set is going to blow up in 2 minutes. It's really exciting to be able to do that, and all the little things that it brings along with it.
Well, that's tremendously exciting. We've got the profound physicality of Anna Furse's performers, and a performer as author, which are fascinating in themselves. And then we've got you with your remotely controlled, your astronaut performers. I think that's also incredibly interesting. Di, tell us about performers for you. Are they operators? Are they the puppets? Are they who's doing the performing?
I suppose, I suppose it is a blend of the puppeteer and the puppet, and I think because the majority of my work has revolved around puppetry performance, like it's the role of the performer is a lot more fluid, and we're in, like I said, a sort of a really sort of uncontrollable space, and I like the idea of being sort of hyper aware of the audience, and like you have to sort of think on the fly and see who you can interact with or who not to interact with. I've terrified quite a few dogs and children in the past, so it's just like being aware of that and seeing where the line is blurred. And like, I suppose as a designer, it's just and as a designer and say as an audience member, it's just, I think it goes a bit back to what Klaus is saying, like just being super immersed in something, and not something completely unexpected happens, and I love that sort of that element of surprise, and like, so yeah.
Do you in fact puppets. What do most people think of? They think of puppets. I think of Warhorse, I suppose, moment probably. But if I think of puppets I have known, Cantor puppets. Cantor, the Polish guy, used to do things with huge life-size dummies that were actually were not lifelike. They were death-like. They were like having dead bodies on stage and having cars, And then Warhorse with their extraordinary lifelike puppets, and then. I can't think of any more. But what turns you on about the puppet as a thing? Is it its otherworldliness? It's not a performer in the same way that it's lifelike. It's not a performer with the candles, but which are like bodies. Is it? What is it? What is it? What do you like about puppet?
For me, I think it's like I don't know if it's because I'm small, but I make it up for it with scale. So the puppets I have made are like some of the biggest ones I've made are sort of 3 meters tall, and it's sort of playing with that scale and just seeing something so out of the ordinary in an ordinary space, and again seeing that response. To see the response from the audience, like how the kids react and suddenly get completely taken away by this, unlifelike thing, but they believe that it's real and they want to interact with it. They want to sort of give a high five, and just seeing that response as well. And it's, I don't know, it just depends. I've worked with small scale, and it's for me, like, I suppose I'm like a sort of secret introvert performer. So I love puppeteering because the focus isn't on me. I can hide behind the puppet and I can project through that puppet, and I can be whoever that is. So like I puppeteered for a production of Hansel and Gretel, directed by Clive Hicks Jenkins a few years ago, and it's Hansel and Gretel it was a very dark version for adults, and Jan Zowlard made the puppets, who has worked a lot with the Little Angel Theatre, and they were the most beautifully intricate made puppets. And it was like, again, I just love becoming that tiny little character, and just transporting you to somewhere else and transporting other people, like, and making people.
You're the performer here, aren't you? Puppets are to you what ventriloquist dummies are to Nina Conte. A way of being.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. So it's scale, like. Who used to do, I mean, there's loads of people. There's a history of this. Welfare State were about years ago doing this stuff. Do you know Welfare State? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bread and Puppet in Canada. America. Sorry.
That's lovely. We're getting a good sense of what the performer is. Klaus, the performer in what you do is partly the audience, isn't it? But tell us about performance. What do you think of if you think of performance? How does it open out for you, that word?
Yeah, I mean, it can blur, but I guess the performers still know that they're performers in some way. The audience maybe sometimes don't quite know if they're performing or if they're participating. But yeah, the role of the performer in our shows really hugely varies, and a bit like with David, they've got lots of different roles. They're facilitators, they're guides, they're characters, and they're puppeteers of space, really. Also, sometimes we also work with puppets, but a lot of the times they're puppeteers of space. So they're animating the space, and the actions usually, become part of the event. They're not hidden. The interaction of, we've got, for example, when we've got people sitting in wooden carts, and the performers on the outside move people through a multimedia environment, and then they can open peepholes and dock the carts to installations and interact with the people in the carts. So they really become these kind of facilitators and performers, and they need to kind of shift. And of course, they have got this kind of sense of having to react to the moment, like Di said, this kind of sense. It will never be the same, because we're working with a live encounter. you never know what exactly will happen. I guess you build maybe up a kind of a bag of experience where you go like, okay, this can happen and this can happen, but you will always at some point be surprised by yet another reaction. And of course, the devisers and makers. And often, you know, we start off with an idea, then we kind of create, we start to create the contraption, and then performers are coming in, and then they're doing stuff with it, and then you go like, oh, okay, we need to change everything because we want to be able to do this. We want to be able to go on top. We want to be able to turn it around. So it's a kind of an organic process, and they are. Yes, you know, so involved in the making process, and then, you know, like the vision changes as you start playing with a space, with a set. And I'm sometimes I get so wound up with all these terms because you talk about a performance space and then installation space and so on, and sometimes nothing really seems to fully fit. But yeah, I guess and then I guess there's a sense that performers, you know, there's a certain kind of intimacy that they kind of bring to work. And for example, in Carte Macabre, towards the end of the performance, performers are, you know, so the audience sits in these wooden carts, complete darkness, and they move through this multimedia environment, and they're in there for an hour and a half. And they have got all these different encounters and so on, but they never see the performers. And in the end, the performer slides through the roof of the cart and just hugs whoever they meet in there. And this embrace becomes something quite, you know, like profound, because the experience is quite intense. And yeah, so there's you know, they have to bring a lot. They have to bring their own vulnerability to it. They you know, they have to be daring and interact, and you know, and it's tiring. And you know, it's interesting. Dougal, who I work with, he after doing Carte Macabre for an extended run, he said like, I don't want to do a show again where I'm not seen. You know, so yeah, so yeah, there are all these kind of different things that come to it, and then they bring their voices. I mean, that's kind of very crucial for our work. Is their voices, and the voices of the singers, and the voices also of the speakers, and to have the awareness what you create spatially with that voice, and how you can kind of open up the space through sound and voice, and the awareness of being surrounded, and directionality. And distance, I guess, you know, a sense of distance can so beautifully be created by a voice that comes from afar, and then a voice that comes closer. So yeah.
So I mean, you're definitely concentrating on the audience experience, aren't you? The performers are not they're not in charge. The performers aren't.
Sometimes they are very much in charge. Sometimes they will manipulate the audience, and sometimes they will give them space to make their own decisions. So I think it can change. I guess it comes back to that sense of change, actually, that we don't prescribe to trying to find a one solution, but you know, like, but to explore different things and to see what happens. Yeah.
Okay, Anna, can we come to you and ask about audience in your work? And I know because you're working with an awful lot of practitioners, and they're all producing different works, and they will be aiming at different relationships with audience. But in your work, or just exemplify for us in your work, something that did alter your perception of the audience, or what you want. I guess the question is, what did you want to give the audience? And that's probably the question of how to phrase for all of you. What are you doing for the audiences? What are you doing for them?
Well, in my case, I've done some site-specific work, but generally I've worked in theatre spaces or converted spaces. So things like a swimming pool or a converted abattoir and those sort of spaces. I haven't done that much outdoor work in my career. I'm quite a theatre animal when it comes to making performance. So I think your second bit of the question is more relevant to my own practice, which is what do I want to do to an audience? What do I want to give an audience?
Yes, yes.
What do I want to give an audience? I think I want to give them a space in which they can find their own relationship to what I'm giving them, and acknowledge that there isn't one common meaning, you know, that I might think I'm saying something, but they're always going to go away with something else. I've experienced this again and again and again in my work. And that's what I teach from as well, is that there's no sort of stable meaning. So to strive for a stable meaning seems absurd in performance. So I think once you acknowledge that you're in a space where there is a designed meaning, and then there is a received set of meanings from every individual in that space, you're in quite an exciting kind of space of community where people can all find themselves laughing at the same time because that moment has happened, but they can also find themselves going off into different places in their own minds. And I'm fascinated by that. I'm really fascinated by that because it's inaccessible. You can't actually know what that individual's imagination is doing, what you're touching or not. So I love that kind of unknown, that kind of certainty of what you as an artist want to do and say with your material. And then that kind of sense of absolute mystery of what's out there, except it's palpable. So you can feel a tension. I remember being away and coming into, it was a particularly intense piece I'd made with Payne's Plough that I'd actually written myself, that was set in a mental asylum in the 19th century. And I had been away, so I'd had to come in during the performance into my own show. And it was it was in the middle of the piece, and it was in a particularly strenuously difficult moment in the production. And I could sort of feel I could feel that energy, you know, the energy of probably why we all love to make theatre, when you feel everyone's breath is held and there's a kind of a tension, which is really magical, which is why we all do it. So of course I'm looking for that, everyone holding their breath at the same time, but actually technically I'm working for that multiplicity of possible meanings and the kind of resonances that you might create, and recognizing that your own sort of fetish for an object that you want on stage, for example, a gesture, I'm very, you know, there's certain details. A performer will do something unconsciously in rehearsal. I'll say, please do it every time. I say, what are you talking about? I said, well, your hand dropped, you know, and they go, what? Your hand dropped and it moved me and I want to see it every time. That's over controlling. But I mean, I love that sort of, that world in which you choose very, very carefully every scenographic decision, and then you hope to create something that reaches people, and then you accept that there is this gulf, this absolute gulf, because we can't control people, nor should we wish to. So that's what I love about art making, whether it's theatre or not, but theatre is a very particular space for that uncertainty, I think, to happen.
That's a lovely answer. It's the possibility that the audience, the possibilities of audience as audience.
Yes.
I think that's Diana, audience for you. We know that they merge with each other, but audience for you. What do you want to leave them? How do you want them, when they go away? What do you want them to say in the pub?
Well, as I said before, I've done a lot of community outreach work with groups of people who might not have been to theatre at all. They might have been to the pantomime once, and that's it. So it's for me, it's sort of breaking down that barrier and that sort of belief of what they think theatre is. And I find it especially in West Wales, we haven't got, there's not tons and tons of theatre, and it is always a challenge to get people to come to theatre. And I find, especially with alternative spaces and more immersive theatre and more participatory work, that it helps to break down those barriers and let the communities sort of realise what you can get out of it and what it is about it. And just to get them to see it from a different perspective, you know. So it's kind of that's always the kind of the challenge for me, and working on different groups and stuff and working in different ways with them to see the opportunities that are out there, that anybody can get involved with theatre, no matter where you're from, what you do, whatever, you know. So it's that's kind of where I'm at.
This is straight out of Stephen Joseph, I might say, this idea of democratisation of theatre. Fantastic. Klaus, the audience. I think we've probably travelled a bit of this ground, because I know that you've got the audience as performers and they're responding. But can you add anything to this about audience in your?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I very much kind of related to what Anna was talking about, the kind of sense that people have their own journey, and obviously we have the same journey. If you listen to me, you know, Di will understand me different than Anna will. Yeah, so that is a given anyway. But I think I really bring that in my work into the foreground, and I love the shifting of perspective, and to in a way give audience a different role through changing their perspective, and give them a different relationship to what is happening. And it might be that we shift everyone's perspective, or just a number of, and then of course audience sees audience, so we seeing other people seeing, and you know, we have that in the round already, but in kind of immersive theater we're turning that around, where in the round we have the performer that is immersed and has to play to all sides. We're immersing the audience, and the different perspectives come together. And I quite openly, I'm starting to do a lot of research and development with students now, and I love, actually, I've resisted it for years, but over the last 3 years I've started to work with students on bigger projects, and really enjoyed that work. And we did a show called Perspectives, and the audience sit on seating blocks and they're on wheels, and that's really it, and they can be coupled to each other and from each other, and we can move them as blocks and shift them around and set them up into different formations, and it changes everything. And the kind of the sense, and we do the first third of the show is just frontal. Everybody settles absolutely into this sense of like, you forget that you sit on a dolly, and then all of a sudden we start moving you, and the first row of seats just travels forward. And I was speaking to Greg, and he said, like, when I saw that, it was almost like they're going, and you know, you sit behind that row and the others are going, and so that kind of sense that actually the audience becomes such a tool to play with as well, and they make space and they create space, and those bodies, and you know, in Biosphere, slowly we would add to the audience. They would come into, it's all this thing, they sit on a kind of Hessian carpet, and then we move them off the carpet, and the maze is vinched up and becomes this volume in space, and they enter it, and they're all being handed masks, and slowly we have more and more reindeer masked performers, and suddenly nobody knows who's who anymore. And so, yeah, all this kind of playfulness of playing on the verge of who is who, and who has got which role, and the sense that me watching somebody interacting with somebody else, the kind of empathy that I feel is different when I know that is an audience member there than if I see two performers interacting, because I know they are not prepared. Performers have the privilege of being prepared. We are prepared. The audience isn't. That gives us a lot of responsibilities as makers as well. You know, we've got a lot of responsibility in terms of how we deal with these unprepared people, and we know so little about them. I
think it's absolutely fascinating what you do, and I'm particularly interested in the idea that you rather than thinking of sightlines as something that has a view of the meaning, you're thinking of sightlines as the things that make the meaning, and I think that's a really, apart from anything else, that appeals to me now. So playing with those changes the meaning, and I think that's insightful. David, Farley, audience for you. And we're running out of time a little bit, but David, audience for you, who are they, what do they do, and how do you think of them, and how do you want them to feel?
I want them to feel like they're glad that they turned up, that they are they've had an exciting time watching something that they can't quite believe has just happened in front of them. Yeah, I think there's something within the manipulation of audience in the way that we do with Slung Low that brings them together as a group, as a gang, and I think that's quite exciting, kind of through putting them through a sequence of events where they've had to kind of move from different location to location, that they've been corralled and become part of the action sometimes in some ways. Yeah, most of all, for them to turn around and say, wow, I cannot believe you just did that.
I mean, that's interesting. So you consciously work at creating a group identity for the audience. Like they feel connected with each other by the end of it.
Yeah, so sometimes, you know, again, it's in terms of that community building that, yeah, it might be subtle, or it might be quite overt, but I think, yeah, it's I think particularly because of the isolation that can happen when you start using the kind of headphone technology, that kind of trying to kind of counteract some of that. Yeah, something to think about.
Thank you, David. I mean, I'd love to see you. I can't help but think that you should all work together in some. It'd be fantastic. We'd have this thing on water, and it'd be people being radio controlled, and like it'd be diving around, and it'd be fantastic. But we should probably move to Q&As, shouldn't we? Alicia, did you say we're getting to that time?
So I think we've got a little bit of time. I think David was going to be talking a little bit about the SBTD, who have been collaborating with us for this particular event. If David is still happy to talk about that.
Yeah.
Do that.
Very good. Yes. So, yeah, SBTD, the Society of British Theatre Designers. We are a community of theatre designers, student, graduate, professional, retired designers, and all those who are interested in design as well. You don't have to be a theatre designer to be an associate member. We have lighting designers and projection designers in our midst as well. So it's a lot broader than just set costume designers. It's a voluntary organisation run by practicing designers and educators. So yeah, we're going to buy designers for designers. One of the things we do is advocate for designers throughout their career, from early up to established, regarding fees, working conditions and practices. And this includes negotiations with the Independent Theatre Council, ITC, UK Theatre, and Society of London Theatres, SALT, those bigger bodies who govern the majority of contracts and rights that we come against. So we're in discussions with them and equity. We decide on priorities based on hearing the needs of our members and the design community. That helps shapes our activities. So it's very much from the ground up rather than top down. We do this through consulting in various different ways, formal events, informal events. There are a set of working groups. This is a relatively recent thing, the last year or so, a couple of years, and these have evolved out of those discussions and events, and these allow groups to focus on specific areas of interest, so including sustainability, sustainable design and how that works, mentoring, education, collaborations with different types of people and performers, designers taking the lead. So how does a designer put together a proposal for a piece and go through the whole process of applying for grants and applications? So those are some of the working groups. We have a publication working group, but these are places to share knowledge, ideas, and grow projects. So kind of, yeah, places for specific interests to come together. We celebrate the work of theatre designers with the public. This is one of our charitable remits, so we are an official charity, and that's one of the things that we do. We do it through national exhibitions, residencies at places like the V&A and the National Centre for Craft and Design, and we also participate in the Prague Quadrennial exhibition of performance and design, which happens every 4 years as well. Membership is open to you at every stage of a career, so there's different price brackets for different levels. So whether you're a student, we've tried to make that as affordable as possible. As part of your professional membership, and also the new professionals, so that's 3 years after you graduate, public liability and product liability insurance is included with that. So actually, when you look at the price of the membership fee, it's a bit of a bargain, quite frankly. You get that, and then also, yeah, help fund the society in all the other things that it does as well. Yeah, but most of all, it's a place for designers and theatre lovers to come together, support each other, and be part of a wider community. As a theatre designer, it can be quite a lonely thing, quite often working on your own on a project for long periods of time. So trying to counteract some of that, bring the community together. Come and join us, whether you're a designer or you just have an interest in design. We'd love you to become OB members.
Perfect. Thank you, David. And I'll put some more information in the chat for everybody at the end of the session as well, if you are interested in finding out some more about the SBTD. So Dave, I think it is time for Q&A. We have some very silent attendees with us today, some very shy attendees. So I know that we do have some pre-questions that we had kind of written up, if you are happy to go through those. But I did have one question come through. Let me see if I can just find it for you. Bear with me. It got put into the chat. Of course, it's completely disappeared. This is why we use the Q&A tab. Just bear with me while I find it for you guys. I think it came through from David Evans. So if David, are you happy to read that out for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that is really interesting about all the conversations that have been going on is how the hierarchy of these different forms of theatre making is very different from the traditional hierarchy of perhaps what occurs behind a proscenium, where the director sits at the top of the pyramid and everything flows from there. This feels like a much more horizontal form. I was wondering if anybody had any thoughts on that.
There we go. Anna?
Yeah, I certainly do. In fact, I'm just supervising a PhD with a costume designer whose PhD is called the subordinate costume, where she puts the costume out front as the lead, the lead of the entire theatre making process, which is really fascinating, and it's being put into practice in production and in workshop. And I totally agree with you with this kind of, I mean, I'm a director and writer, you'd think I'm very authorial, and I am quite an authorial director, but the horizontal, I think, is absolutely fascinating. And I think some of the artists who are speaking today are kind of speaking from a horizontal practice anyway. I mean, putting the visual out front as the kind of most important element of scenography, I think, is something that's taken a long time in this country to be acceptable, frankly. I mean, 30 years ago, it was such taboo. If you're a visual maker, visual theatre maker, you were given much less money from the Arts Council. It came from a little office called Combined Arts because they didn't know where to place you. And the designer was supposed to serve the production, as we know. And, there's a whole tradition to that we know about. That I think is being really well shifted now. I think that, and I love that designers are being so articulate and so self-organizing. I worked a lot with Sally Jacobs, RIP, a very close friend of mine. And, she really invented Peter Brook's aesthetic, but people say Peter Brook's white box, Midsummer Night's Dream. It was entirely Sally's concept, and she never got the full credit for all that innovation, that visual innovation. So I agree. I think there's a really interesting horizontality that's being touched on today.
And also, Klaus, decision making and what comes first in your, well, what comes first in your, actually it's going to be easy question to answer, it's going to be the scenography, isn't it? It's going to be the contraptions. So tell us a little bit about who's involved in designing the contraptions.
Yeah, so I think it isn't quite so straightforward that the contraption comes first. It might be that, you know, like you come up with an idea for kind of a spatial thing and you go like, ah, that would be great, and then that kind of tells you what kind of narrative there might be. But it might be the other way around. It might be you work with a narrative and then you start thinking about how you can create something for that. And then again, I think there's a kind of a figure of 8 or whatever, where the one feeds the other, and then the other, you know, as I was saying earlier, when you know, performers coming in starting to play with the stuff, and then suddenly you realize, okay, it needs to be different, or you get new ideas.
Can you just exemplify a little bit what you mean by narrative, Klaus? Give an example of a just.
Well, so our show Leviathan is based on Melville's Moby Dick, and the overarching narrative is that everybody but one drowns, and the audience in the beginning of the show, they will enter the show and they will look upon a projection of water that is projected onto a large sail vertically suspended in front of them. And in the end of the show, after lots of other things have happened, they will come and they will be underneath that sail. The sail will come upon them and will bring everybody to their knees, and it becomes a kind of a metaphor for communal drowning. And that bit of story is told just through the space. There's nobody standing there telling anybody you're now drowning, but it is the sheet that comes upon you, and you see suddenly the waves above you, and then it comes lower and lower, and you'll have to go down and you'll have to come to your knees. And in some way, that's I guess where the space starts to tell the story of its own. But other things are more abstract. So it's, you know, in my work, it can be yeah. Go back to the. Can you remind me of the question? This has somehow sidetracked me.
So the question was: do you find that there is a difference, a different hierarchy in the field?
Understand that the decision-making process. That's a bit like a funnel for me. It's not just vertical, but it starts off really open. But it does narrow at some point, and at some point I will make decisions. Yeah, I will go like, okay, that's the way we do it. And I do think there comes a point where the people involved will also be, you know, like it's happening tomorrow. We need to decide if we do it like this or like that. And I will say, we'll do it like this. and that feels right as well at that point, and also desired. But, you know, I mean, we've got kind of all kind of committee things in place. If everybody says no, Klaus, then, you know, I'll have to bow in the end. But overall, I guess different phases require different things, I think, and different, you know, there are moments where it's my job to sit and listen and watch and see what people do, and then there and sometimes it's great to be democratic, and then sometimes it just, you know, it shifts in another way, and we go like, okay, no, we're gonna go this way, and then we go that way, and then, you know, we might turn back and I say, sorry, I got it wrong. But, you know, like, you need to also be able to do that. But yeah, so it changes a bit like everything.
Can I ask you also something which we've touched on a little bit, which is to do with production contexts and how available they are? Because all of the work that you all do is not only out of the theatre, but it's out of the theatre model. It's not rep-style production structures. We're talking a different kind of, these things arrive in different ways and they're put together differently. How do you see the future? How do you feel, what excites you? Let's have a positive way of asking this, but what excites you about your future work in this country? Where do you see your major opportunities? Where are the exciting things happening for you? I'm very interested in this from each of you, really. David Farley.
Well, yeah, I think bigger and more explosions. I mean, I could do without a show on water. Some dry land would make things a little bit simpler for a while, but also definitely not adverse to another large body of water. Yeah, and I think the value of the community aspect, the reach that these kind of crazy things can achieve, and the way that it allows a community to kind of look inside to what this might be. And that was one of the really exciting things about the process of creating Floods, was that we were embedded with this community for 6 months, where we were building a set in the middle of this housing estate that just happened to have a half tide basin bang in the middle of it, that was only used to dump old shopping trolleys in by the youth. And for it to be used for something, they were really excited about, and they could see the whole process. They could see us building the set, they could see us doing all of our rehearsals, doing our pyrotechnic tests, bringing the community company down and rehearsing them there.
So do you think that the opportunities for doing this kind of work are going to increase or decrease?
I think, I mean, who knows? But I think, at least because of the fact that it has the opportunity to reach a very different demographic because of its nature. But yeah, it's potentially allows us to kind of hit some different funding streams, which would be good.
Anna, what excites you about your future directions? Where are you heading with your work?
It's interesting because I'm a real, I'm a through and through theatre animal for over 50 years now. However, both for reasons of sustainability and pragmatism, I've become really fascinated in the possibilities of the digital. And I'm not a digital artist. I have to get other people to do the mechanics, but I can conceive digitally work. And I've become kind of in love with the possibilities of its reach and its inclusivity. And I guess I come from a family of filmmakers, and I, for various reasons, didn't go into film. It's the closest thing to being a filmmaker in a way I can be, is to think of the digital space as an interactive, live, democratic space of navigation through the world I might want to create, or the gallery. I've got a gallery at the moment up. So in terms of future, because I think the funding is going to be really crap. I mean, I wish you all luck, because I think you're a lot younger than me, and we'll need, you'll need the money for the kinds of scale of project that you're talking about. I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm going sort of small and sustainable in order to paradoxically potentially reach more people. I will still do live work, I'm sure, but it's really, really hard to raise money, as we know now, for live work. And because you're say with the Arts Council, your funding is so dependent on so many factors. You don't fill in an Arts Council form now and talk about the art. You talk about everything but the art. So it's a really, you have to negotiate so many strategic relationships to the funding in order to get it. It's quite hard to say, I just want to research this idea with these people for this reason. You can't really do that anymore. And I'm of the generation where not only could you do that, but if you overspent, they'd say, here's a supplementary grant for having got an overdraft. It's a different world. It's a different world now.
I don't think I even lived in that world, but Diana,
I did, I tell you, yeah.
Good about the future, Diana?
I think it is bringing more sort of immersive theatre down to West Wales, and it might, it might not be something that's completely new or something sort of revolutionary, but just bringing different theatre down here, and again just introducing it to audiences and getting them excited about what is out there further afield.
Nice. No, Klaus?
Yeah, I mean, in some way, I'm kind of optimistic that I think there will be a huge hunger for people to, after this long period of, isolation and so on, there will be a huge hunger for events, for things to happen in the real world. I'm also working on a digital project in the moment, so it's actually I find it though that the funding goes really quite through the roof, because getting developers to make stuff for you for like apps for VR headset that we're working on is actually really pricey. And they are not people that, like performers, will work for an apple and an egg, unfortunately, as they so often do. And they're not, like if I direct a show and money goes, the first person to cut is me. So then my wages go, and that's okay. But so in that world, you can't quite do that. But yeah, I find that hugely exciting as well, and I find it hugely exciting to bring the two together, really, because I think there are some real opportunities there to create stuff that happens in the real world and that happens in the digital realm. And we had 2 students this year that did a performance on Facebook. And it was hugely complex, actually, what they kind of managed to pull off. And I supervised them because it was their final piece. But they did some really interesting things there. And actually, the overlaps where they then got to meet, because luckily it was just at that point opened up that they could, one of their audience members in real life, and we were all interacting on Facebook, and at some point it all kind of, really the question became like, are we characters in this, and so on. So all these things can happen in digital realms, but I think the physical can't just completely disappear, because there's something in that is, I mean, isn't it? It's so great to come together in a real space. And, as teachers, as educators, we know how draining it is to just be teaching online. So I think we will come together, and, there will be new spaces, with all this things, as things go down economically and funding wise, other opportunities I think will come up. We're creative people, there will be new spaces because businesses will go bust. We will move into those spaces. People will start doing things. It doesn't mean there will be more money, but I don't think there will be less creativity. I think I think we must be positive and think that, with all the Brexit and all the Corona, we need to, as practitioners, I think we need to give hope to people, really, that stuff can still go on.
We certainly will. I mean, here at the Cockpit, we all fell in love with the idea of the expanded event, when we were putting things online and doing Zoom meetings and doing shows on Zoom. And then we had shows on Zoom about people plotting things on Zoom, and we had shows in the theatre with the Zoom meeting. We'd all done. And suddenly the idea of the expanded event was expanded. Now I have to say, everybody's saying, well, yeah, but there's a lot of it and we're all doing it. And so there seems to be a new appetite, certainly, for performance again. That's absolutely palpable where I am in my neck of the woods. People just dying to go in and wanting to do stuff on stages and do stuff like that. So, but I'm sure both will happen, and they'll happen in the gaps left by change, as ever. Someone's put up a nice question on the Q&A, suggesting that you might want to ask each other a question. Does anybody on this, because it doesn't have to all go through me, so if anybody's had their boat floated by somebody else, no, of course you'll sit there, you won't say anything because you're not interested in what each other does, but I don't actually believe that. But does any of you guys want to put a question to anybody else, or a question that you're turning over anyway that we might all comment on? No.
I think you're putting everyone under the spot there, Dave.
Well, I think I might be interesting of both of Di and David to hear a bit more about working. I mean, in a way, I've worked with a lot of performers, but also maybe with people that like where people aren't performers, but actually, so my wife, for example, she's heavily involved with the scenography of costume design and kind of detail and so on, because she's kind of fine art background. But often everybody kind of ends up, even the photographer that we've kind of hired, we suddenly gets a role because we need people to do something. But I've not really run community projects where I go into the project wanting to work with community. And I wonder how that kind of, maybe the material that you choose to work on, how do you choose the material? Is that influenced by that you think that material is particularly well suited to work with people that have a non-theatre background, or do you say like, well, we'll just throw them in there?
That's a decent question, Di and David.
I'll sort of give an example actually. So the Go Tell the Bees that the production I was just mentioning that we finished back in May with National Theatre of Wales. So it was a 4-year project overall, where they had associates each year that would go and like interact with different community groups around Pembrokeshire. And throughout that 4 years, they were gathering information about what the community wanted and what they wanted to see at the end, what this production was going to be. So it was very much a show or a film as it ended up being, for the people, like about the people and what they wanted. So there was an event, and we got everyone together and asked the question, what is it that you want to see that come out of this? And it was really interesting. It turned out that the majority of people wanted something to do with the environment. So we based it around that, and then COVID hit, and then it was strange. It was so challenging because of that. We carried on, we did digital, but everything that came out of it linked with COVID even seemed so much more relevant again. So from that perspective, it was all from the community. And then we had to, we worked in different ways and kept them involved with like some script writing elements, and then there was community members who were shot in different segments, so there's people in the film, so there was loads of different layers to it, on how people could get involved in the end. So
right, Alicia, she's trying to tell me something. 3 minutes until we have to. Matthew Freeman has a question. Let's ask Matthew Freeman's question. Matthew Freeman, very quickly, how do you see technicians in your productions? This is from Matthew Freeman, who is himself a technician, of course, as we all know. But technical roles in your production, this is vast subject. I wonder what he actually meant by that. Matthew, what do you mean by your?
I could jump in there if you want.
Please do.
Because in a way, I was talking earlier about performers being operators, and in a way, so often. I mean, of course, we've got technicians that work on a show. More often than not, they're seen as part of the action they're doing, or we won't hide them away. At times we do. It depends a little bit on the show. But I remember when we were putting on Leviathan in Spain, we were entering this different culture, and we're putting up the set, and at some point we realized we're short of a couple of people to hoist this sail up at a particular moment. And we talked with the technicians and said, could we have 2 people that help with that and so on? And they were like, yeah, that's fine. And then it was a couple of days before the performance, and then they suddenly said like, but I will be seen when I do that. And then I said, yeah, of course. And they said like, no, I cannot do that because I'm not being paid to perform. I'm a technician. And so in the end, they put themselves a kind of curtain in front of it, but it kind of, it just showed me actually maybe my own like how my view was. I'm working with this company, and we get so close knit and tight, but actually that there are very different perspectives on what different roles are, and that so our roles are so fluent in the company, and there are much more regimented roles out there. So
they're also union protected, Klaus. I mean, that's important to respect as well.
Absolutely.
And in the old days, when there was a lot of community theatre and a lot of jobs, and you could open the pages of Time Out every week, and there'd be a number of jobs available to work in theatre professionally, you could get into theatre by being precisely a performing technician. There was a role for that, an acting ASM.
Yep.
You know, but I think we've got to also respect, you know, people choose to be technicians for specific reasons. They may or may not want to break their own union code, and they may or may not want to perform. But I really respect that. And I was thinking what Diana was saying about the puppeteer too, who is in a sense a technician, a performer, a technician. It's a highly technical craft. Most puppeteers, like she said, you know, are working through the puppet, not wanting to be an out front performer. And that, you know, I think that everyone has their reason for taking on the particular role that they've taken and developed their career in relation to that.
And then I guess we also have what's a bit of an old chestnut for British theatre, which is the status of technicians.
Absolutely.
To the status of others. We're a literary-led tradition, which in continental Europe, as they used to call it, that's not necessarily the case. So there's it's a complex issue. All I know is at the moment is we haven't got enough technicians. That I do know.
Yeah.
I thought,
paradox.
It's very difficult to staff up with technicians, and they're absolutely vital. You know.
Yeah.
So absolutely, and the more creative a role they have, the better. So we have to wind up. I think Alicia is telling me. So I'm going to wind up. Well, I've had a really lovely time talking to you guys. I hope you've been intrigued to hear from each other as I've been intrigued to hear from all of you. We usually at this point in the proceedings have a huge great wodge of questions from the audience. We don't have it in this case, no matter. I'm going to wind up and I'm going to thank you all for being with us, and I've got to just find out what I've got to actually say. So thank you, and thank you for everyone that did join us today. And I do hope you've had something to take away with you. I'm sure you can't fail to have taken something away from this. These people have been fascinating. The seminar has been recorded and will be available in a few days with captioning on the ABTT website. It says insert link here, but I think that's probably a typo. Other ABT seminars that can be found here. That's on the ABTT site too. You can find all the seminars are recorded. They're all available free of charge forever, to everyone forever, in all languages, hopefully in the future. If you are interested in finding out more about the Stephen Joseph Society Committee, you can do so at ABTT on their just /committee till you find, and keep clicking around there and you'll find the Stephen Joseph Society Committee. If you'd like to find out more about the Society of British Theatre Designers, which I hope you do, they're an extraordinary organisation, please find them on social media or take a look at their website, which is ABTT, I'm sure you can find. Be sure to check out the work of the Cockpit. Oh, that's a bit for me. Yes, check out the work of the Cockpit. We do all manner of things. It's fantastic here. We love it. But thank you to you for tuning in or being here. And thank you to all our panellists, Anna, to Diana, to Klaus, and to David, and to Alicia, who puts this thing, a technician that puts this thing together, and Matthew, another technician, without whom I can assure you this wouldn't be happening at all. Thank you so much. I've had a lovely time. I hope at least some of you have as well, and I hope to see you again. And I mean that. I would love to see you all. Ciao for now. I'm going now.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye all. Bye.
Bye.